In this lesson, we'll begin to do some sculpting and shaping on our rock base. So let's start where we left off. This is 09 begin, and it's our base subdivided mesh that we have. And let's start to look at how we can sculpt. Let's spend a few minutes talking just about the basics of sculpting. And we'll just use the standard brush. And let's talk about the settings up here. So when we have Z add on, this is letting us know it's going to pull that detail out. Okay, if we were to choose Z sub, it would push that detail into the surface. And again, the smoothness of the stroke is determined by the subdivision level, or how much this is subdivided. So if we come down to the bottom level here, you can see it's very faceted. Now with RGB on, whenever we paint, we are actually painting with color as well. So if we turn that off, this will kind of constrain it to only being sculpting. We can also change the draw size. So that's this cursor size. So we can make a very large stroke, or we can have a very small stroke. All right. The focal shift will change that sort of inner ring there, and that'll change how the brush kind of falls off. So from a longer sort of fall off to a sharper, more abrupt fall off, we can change that as well. You can hit O on your keyboard to modify that. You can see how that's a bit softer. If you hit S on your keyboard, that'll allow you to really quickly change the brush size as well. You can also change them up here, or you can come in hitting the space bar and change it this way also. Okay. The nice thing about this dynamic draw size is the fact that we have a draw size that's this size right now, let's say. If we were to kind of move back out, you can see that with that dynamic draw size on, the brush size stays the same based on the size. So if we wanted to make another stroke, it's going to be the same size. Before, in previous versions, or if we just turn this off, if we do the same thing here and make a particular draw size, and then we back out, the size stays the same. So in this case, it's actually larger relative to the size of the geometry because we've moved out away from it. And so having this dynamic draw size is a really cool thing. All right, so what you want to do is at your maybe lower levels, come in and start to shape this, and we can use the move brush. So I can activate our brushes by hitting the B key to bring up our picker, and then we can select from here. And if you want to, you can hit the first letter of the brush that you want to select. So if I want to select the move brush, I'll hit M. That'll narrow it down, and then there's little orange letters that are associated with each one of these brushes. And so you'll find the ones that you really want to use. So I want to use this move brush, and the V key is associated with that. So I can just hit V, and now I've got move selected. So the key combination of B, M, and V will get me to that brush. If I were to hit B, S, T, that would take me to the standard brush. And so once you find the brushes that you like, you can very quickly access those using that. Now the move brush works a little bit differently. So let me take the draw size up. The move brush will allow me to actually just click and pick up detail. And so I can come around and start to add some detail here. I'll add kind of a big hill coming up in the back, and maybe I'll push this down, and then maybe up here I'll kind of pick out a big rocky area that we want him to maybe stand on or something. It doesn't have to look like mine, but I'm just kind of building some of this out. You can see how we can start to build that out. We can also move up in our subdivision levels, and as we do, the detail that we pull up you can start to see kind of seams on the side of that. So a lot of times you'll use this at a lower subdivision level, or you'll get a higher, bigger brush size. Okay. Then we can go back and use the standard brush, so B, S, and T. The standard brush will allow us to come in, make sure Z add is on, and we can start to sculpt. Now you can see that this is raised up fairly high. So what happens if I want that to not be raised up so high? I can take the Z intensity down. So if I take it way down, then I can have more fine control over that being raised up. And it's still driven by the pin pressure. Now we're using a Wacom device to sculpt on this, and that's really what you want to do, is you want to be able to use a tablet to do this, and the Wacom devices are great for that, for the pressure sensitivity. And so you can play with the Z intensity to get what you want. Also, if you hit Shift, this will turn blue, and you can actually smooth out your geometry. So if you do some sculpting in here, you come in, and then you want to smooth it back out, You can use Shift. Also, Control will mask, and then Alt will allow you to do the inverse. So Z-Add, you've got Z-Add selected, you can come in here and sculpt, and then if you hit Alt, it'll be have the same effect as if you selected Z-Sub. You'll be able to kind of push in, but you can do it very quickly and go back and forth by just those key combinations. All right, go up to an upper level. Another cool sculpting brush that we might want to use is clay buildup, and this works with higher subdivision levels a little bit better. So I'll select this brush, get my brush size down a little bit. And so what clay buildup will allow us to do is come in here and almost just add material to this in a very sort of sculptural way. So I can come in and start to define my rocks a little bit better. So, and I can go back in and kind of smooth this out over the top. But it's almost like you're adding these strips of clay that just keep building up. And again, this works well at higher subdivision levels, but it's not high enough to where I can't kind of smooth things out. I can also subtract and kind of cut out from this area, so I can make that a little bit more defined. And it has a cool kind of sculptural quality to it, kind of a traditional quality to it, and it adds those sort of strokes and artifacts to it there. And so you can really quickly sort of build things up that way. If you wanted to come in here and kind of build up this rock and kind of maybe smooth it down a little bit, you can come in here and do it with the clay buildup. So I'll maybe come in here and add a little bit more detail to this rock that's sort of jutting out here. Again, just kind of smoothing this back out and just kind of adding the overall structure and shape. I don't really want to touch the edges because I want it to fit into this sort of metal base that we're going to create. And so I'll just kind of do a little bit of sculpting here to get the overall shape of the rocks. Now we're not getting that sort of rocky texture. We're just kind of building up the main shapes that we want at this point. So, you know, thinking about where you want the hill to be sort of raised up, how you want it to flow down into the surface. And you can modify and use different Z intensities. If you're, start laying down detail and it's just popping out really far, then you can take your intensity down until it gets to a point where you have a little bit more control over it. If you're not really being able to add too much at all, it doesn't look like you're adding anything, bump that Z intensity up a little bit. Now it's still really soft at this point, so another brush that we can use is this Damien standard, or this DAM standard short. But you can come in here and use this, and this is used very commonly to add sort of wrinkles and creases and sharp lines. So we can come in here and add in and just further define the borders of the detail that it is that we're creating here. So come in here and get kind of a larger draw size and make this sort of gully down in here. Maybe kind of define this rock a little bit more. Kind of pull that up a little bit. Okay. If we want to kind of flatten things out, polish can do that for us. So we can kind of make this rock a little bit flatter on top by using this polish brush. If you want to have other areas that are a little bit more flattened, you can use that as well. It'll kind of give you a neat effect. And then you can always go back to use that original brush and shape anything that you want to shape. So if I want to make this sort of rock a little bit bigger, if I want to take it down, so let's kind of stick it up too far, so I can kind of pull this down, or I can go to a lower level and do the same thing as well. Maybe pull this up a little bit more. So I just want this kind of ring of rocks around this sort of gully a little bit. But right now it doesn't really look too much like rocks. I mean, we've sculpted using the move brush. We've used the standard brush to sculpt detail. We've smoothed out information, sculpted detail on here. We have used the clay buildup to really quickly sculpt in detail, but we can also start to take advantage of strokes, the different stroke types and the different alphas to add detail to our rocks. And so let's go ahead in the next lesson and take a look at that process.